What's going on, Soul Tribe? And welcome to Alchemist Astrology. Justin here, and are you ready to get into them Lunar Shenanigans, which is a weekly show that talks about the astrology of the moon, whose domicile it's in, what phase it's in, when it happens to go void of course, and to get an understanding as the moon navigates through the different configurations that it makes with the other celestial bodies. It's beneficial to sync up with that good old moon. That's fortune. We're talking about that. I'm looking at the moon. Well, the moon's not out right now, but that's where it would be rising. Man, the moon was the moon was showing off yesterday. That was a nice little moon rising that I got to see, and hopefully you got to see that moon. But when we're looking at the moon this week, we start off with some nice stuff. The moon's still in Pisces, so we're enjoying that being the moon being in aversion to the malefics for a bit, and we're gonna need to bottle up all that goodness because when the moon enters into Aries, which is gonna happen from about in the evening Pacific time on the 12th till about the evening time of the 14th. The moon's going to be co-present with both of the malefics, and thankfully we still have some configurations with the benefics as well. It's almost like this battle, this good versus evil that's going on here. Big Papa's under a little bit of pressure there in that mix. Then we move to the moon in Taurus, and again then we get a bit of a break. That's going to be nice on that late on the or not late, but about evening on the 14th when I'm looking at the chart here. And so we get a little bit of a break there. The moon's going to form. We'll have the new moon that's going to happen in Taurus, and we'll have the moon that has a nice configuration with Big Papa. Gemini. When the moon moves into Gemini on the 16th, the moon's busy this week. We had a lot of sign changes that are going to be going on as well that we're going to be tracking. Moon will move into Gemini on the 16th, and that one's going to be a particularly quiet time. It's just the moon and Saturn. Thankfully, it's a more beneficial aspect. And then we wrap up with the moon entering into its domicile after all of that, which Venus has just entered into there. So we got both of the benefics there. So that's really nice. The moon has come home after all of that. And it's just like, oh, look, guest. And it's been this guest that you would want to see in your home. So I love that for the moon. Nice way to kind of wrap that up. Minus Saturn giving a little bit of side eye, but we won't get into that till the following week there. So yeah, a lot to unpack this week, and we'll navigate these different configurations one at a time there. But before we jump into this thing, if you want to support the work that I'm doing further, down in the description box, there is a link for my Patreon page. So go check that out. I got a couple tiers there, a monthly show that I do on there, and a personalized monthly report that I offer as well. So if that's something that interests you, definitely go check that out. But I'm going to be covering the week. What week am I covering? I'm covering the week of May 12th through the 18th, 2026. And let me go ahead and switch over. If you're watching the video version, on YouTube here, I have a chart pulled up, and I went ahead and started with the moon trine Jupiter. And so the moon's got like a few more aspects that it's gonna be making here. Like I said, when you look at the lay of the land with the moon in Pisces, it's got this harmonious configuration with the sun and sun and Mercury there, which they're about to enter into that Kazemi as well. Mercury's still under the beams for a little bit there, but it's there. That's starting to come to completion. Then it's configured to Venus by square. That one's a little bit of a tougher one. And then we have this really nice trine with Jupiter, which is what we kind of start the week off with. And we really kind of like this because when we think about that, the idea of the moon being in the domicile of Big Papa, Jupiter is the greater benefic. Jupiter is signifies childbearing and love and desire and friendships with great people. There's this idea of abundance. There's this gnosis that comes with Jupiter, that spiritual understanding, authority over temples, ranks, zeal, crowns. We love Jupiter. I don't care what anybody says. I'm a little biased about that. But when you think about that, that's a great environment for the moon to do moon stuff. The moon is that idea of, like I said at the beginning, that idea of fortune. And so when we think about that in Jupiter's house, that's good fortune that's going around. And that's not something where I think just the idea of luckiness that's happening. It's this idea of it's this idea of creating those moments where you just feel abundant, where you feel as much as one can. This could be just taking a minute and having a phone call with a friend, or it can be going out there and appreciating the day. It could be having a moment with your child, thinking about that idea of Jupiter and the moon. There's a lot of nurturing. The moon's able to nurture and do it's again those lunar things that it does, it that ability to take care of the body, to have those moments, those quiet moments. Even I think of the benefics as not just that deliverance from relief but things, but just even that bringing the mind to rest, to be comfortable in the body, to nurture it, to nurture it, body, mind, soul, all of that. I think there's a lot that comes into that, and that moon being in that sextile with the sun. It's that nurture, that it's in those kind of spiritual practices, that gnosis that we're talking about, that or that unlocks that gnosis, that a deeper understanding of one's of this fate, this fortune that we've been allotted, to how to play these hands, how to do the things. And I think that square with Venus, the one only kind of wrench in this really lovely pool that we're kind of swimming in, is the finding the time for those moments when there is so much that's happening. Because I don't want to paint this as just like the moon is that Jupiter's in this harmonious configuration, the trigonal configuration, that there's just peace on earth and everything's just complete, everyone's just gone to sleep for the day. We're just all decided to take a collective nap. No, there's still stuff that's going on, and where I'm here for an exalted Jupiter and being in its, and this is even a really great, if you're looking at the chart, this is a great place for Jupiter to be. It's in particularly in Cancer, because right now it's in its own confines. If you're looking at how I have those five divided points in the chart, those are the confines of the planets. And so Jupiter's in its own space, able to do its own thing, and the moon's there supporting that. It's like, yes, Jupiter, what do you need? Because the more that you give to Jupiter, the more Jupiter gives back. Jupiter will double that. It's like that idea of like, it reminds me of when I would, if you ever worked in like the food industry, where you get like just a really great group of people, and then they invite their friends there. I remember having this family, but I worked in this little diner, and I had met this family. Well, they came and then they left, and then the following year they had their kids came and visited, and they brought their friends, and they recommended to, and we took a picture. It was a whole good time, and that's a very kind of Jupiter thing. But Jupiter's under a lot of pressure right now, even though I do love where Big Papa's at. I'm ready for Jupiter to move into Leo, and I know like it's again, but I may be a little biased. I have Jupiter in Leo, but I like Jupiter entering into Leo, because at least it won't be under that pressure from Saturn, because Saturn is in the traditional planets, Saturn is the slowest moving. So while Jupiter's been in Cancer and Saturn's been in Aries, it says Jupiter only hasn't had much of a break, only when Saturn was in Pisces. And so it's making, again, trying to find ways to make those times to for that goodness that Jupiter can offer. I think of where Jupiter is that achievement of that gnosis. Venus is that again, like that practice, the devotion to the prayer, the meditation, the things along those lines. And again, there could be a lot of stuff that's happening externally that can interfere with that can keep that almost weakens that connection with the light. I think about the moon being in that hexagonal configuration with the sun. That's a beneficial aspect, but it's a weaker one. It's one that requires some effort, requires some initiative. Of course, it would be great to have just always moments of quiet, like, hold on, I'll give you an answer once I have a moment of meditation, and give me a week to kind of contemplate and to talk with spirit. But sometimes we got to come up with stuff on the moment. We got to move because there's things going on right now. We got to be able to do those things right now. And it's like how to find those moments of clarity in in the thick of in the thick of the things, in the thick of the storm there. So, but I do believe that there is some goodness that can be found here, and it's maybe just with that too, with that square or that the tetragonal configuration with Venus, which is a more harder aspect. That one could be where it's just the trying to find the help, trying to find the people, because it's like once we can get the people, then yeah, Jupiter could come in and bring that abundance, the benefic skin, yeah. But if the help is blocked off for some type of way because we got Mars and Saturn here, just throwing rocks at Jupiter, because it's like that's my thing too. It's like when you're thinking about again when people talk about an exalted Jupiter, that can sound really great, but when people are throwing rocks and puddles, throwing puddles, yeah, just whole puddles at Jupiter, that's not very fun. It's like, yeah, no, maybe I'm good on the moon's house for a bit, especially where the moon's about to move here in a bit. And let me go ahead and pull that next whip on there, because that's pretty much talking about. That's pretty much the 12th in a nutshell. And then we move to the moon moving into Aries. And now that's going to happen at about 5:03 p.m. Pacific time. Now, when you're looking at this with your chart, you want to see where you have Aries in your chart. How's that configured to other planets in your chart? Is this an angular house for you? For example, here this is a chart with Libra rising. So right now you got the malefics in the seventh place, which is like marriage, relationships, and things. So there may be some challenges going up, but there the moon may be bringing that up into the mix. So that could be something that's just one way that you potentially look at it, especially if one of these if they're aspecting like a Time Lord or something like that. That could be something to pay attention to. Or Aries is like one of those kind of like houses that are activated for you by perfection, especially from the sun, moon, or rising. That's something to kind of tune into as well. Now, when we look at the lay of the land for the moon, oh, and you know what? Actually, you know what? I'll just I'm trying to work something in, and I just remembered that I'm working something in, but it's fine. I'll do it later. I'll do it another time. I'll end it on this note here. So, but when we're looking at the moon, now it's co-present with both of the malefics, one, which is when you think about the co-presence, the Hellenistic astrologers, this was one the co-presence was thought a bit differently, where we now call them conjunctions. They weren't considered a type of aspect like the hexagonal ones, the tetragonal ones, the trigonal, the diametrical ones. This was where you thought of you blended the energies together. And you know what? Let me actually while I'm thinking about it, let me pause for 1 second. I'm going to look up something in balance and see if we can talk about that combination there. Hold on. All right, I'm back. I'm trying different things. I'm trying to bring in more of the ancient thought into this when we're talking about these sort of delineations here. Now, I wanted to talk about I'm pulling from Vedia's Valence book of anthology here, and this is from book 1, and it talks about the combinations of 3 planets together. And so I'm going to read about the combination of Saturn, Mars, and the Moon. And I want to preface here that the Hellenistic writers, they were savages in how they wrote. They would talk about the extremes of things. So you have to excuse the language of some of the translations that come through there. But Kronos, Saturn, Ares, Mars, and Selene, the moon, cause men to be venturesome in their business enterprises and noble, so that's not bad, but ineffective, meeting with reversals and violence. They become, in turn, violent, reclusive, wicked. They have a plundering and thievish disposition and become defendants in trials. They experience detention in criminal charges, unless, of course, the nativity happens to be fond of wrestling or of weapons. In which case the detention configuration is fulfilled by the holds of wrestling, which that's an interesting thing to say. Some become injured or diseased and will suffer a violent end. And you see, just a preface, everything almost ends in a violent way. So that's just the nature of benefics. Now, the nice thing about this is that it's not all just bad in this. The moon does have configurations with the benefics too, and I think that's something to keep in mind, and just to be to hold that kind of space and thought where there can be good things and there can be bad things happening at the same time. Especially this would be one if you're one, especially if you have like stelliums, for example. I happen to have have 4 planets in Leo, and then I have them being opposed by Saturn, and when things are happening in those fixed places, those the solid signs in my chart, Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, all of those are really busy times, and it's never just like a good or bad thing. There's usually a bit of both that's happening. I'll get some sort of really great insight through some sort of crazy challenge, or I'll receive this great thing, but then something else will break because I needed to. I'll get replace something because something else like broke, and then I end up liking the thing better, but it took a crazy. Or I'll give you another example. My desk was getting all cluttered up here. I spilled water and got water documents all over the place. Where I hated that I spilled water, it got my desk cleaned up. So it's just like how, and that's a very simple example with this. And when you think about that blending, the moon, that representation of the moon dealing with the body, and then you have both of the malefics, which are forces that attack the body. You can think about that just in terms of disease. It doesn't have to always just be violence. There could be like how things think. It's about how kids, you go to the daycare, one kid's coughing, then they're all coughing, and then they bring it home, then you're coughing, and then you take it to work, and then it just becomes a whole thing. So when we have the moon configured here, this would be one where we're being just taking care of ourselves more, making sure that we're getting enough rest, making sure that we're trying to mind the limitations of the body while this is kind of going on here. Because those Mars Saturn co-presences were usually just considered hostile, and there's very rare where you'll see any sort of like real positive. Maybe we're talking about transits of Mars to like a natal Saturn, for example. Let's say like a like a co-presence when it comes into the same sign of your natal Saturn. That could be more of a motivating time for that. But this one just gives me a making sure to take care of oneself, make sure to mind. And I know that can only do so much. I keep that in mind too, because with the moon being in that sort of weaker configuration, again, still beneficial, but that weak configuration with Venus here in this hexagonal one with the moon in with Venus in Gemini. That's I'm not saying these things that I offer are going to be the necessarily quick fixes, but at least it's something, And even just if it's that idea of asking for help, and if there's no help in, let's say, either in the area that you're in or within the group that you're associated with, then there may be a need with those malefics to do some action, to maybe do those, to get from the place of restrictions and those, again, those kind of fusion of both of those malefic kind of experiences, and figure out. I'm trying to think of a way to articulate this. That's there's I think when I factor in like that tetragonal configure the tougher aspect with Jupiter, it can be hard to maybe ask for help when one is, especially when you think about if you're sick, for example. You don't want anyone to see you like that when you got snot, or when something's broken, or maybe there's like I remember when my stepdad had to get surgery. He had the whole thing that was going on with him that had a lot of care that my mom had to that ended up having to do with that. And no one wants to see someone like that. To be in those states of vulnerability, but we need each other. We kind of need each other for those, especially those harder times when we're going through that. And when sometimes it's kind of, I was actually just talking with a friend about this. I had been telling them that like things have been for the most part going pretty smooth on my end, and they had alluded to some maybe some things that have been going on. It's like, well, hey, Hey, unpack a little bit. I'm over here floating on the cloud. Let's get hop on. I got plenty of space. Let's go fly off and work this out so we can get everyone just kind of lifted up here. So this is a definitely interesting sort of blend. There could be this maybe kind of mixed feeling of wanting to do something, not like, wanting to do more, but then feeling that sluggishness from Saturn, that push and pull, that tug and things between that Marshall and Saturn energy that can, again, maybe could lead to burnout and stuff like that. So making sure, I'd even would say to stay hydrated. To, if you're in, I'm thinking about areas where it's like here now it's starting to get warmer, but if there's anything like where we're talking like extreme temperatures and that, making sure to take care in regards to things like that. So that's some other things I would think about with the moon in Saturn too. Moon, Mars, Saturn. I would think even there may be expect, like, I would sort of like to think about with maybe potentially delays in travel when we're talking about some things with those kind of more active sort of configurations with the malefics. That would be another thing that I would kind of tune into. Delays maybe with Saturn. People maybe, like, let's say if you're driving, kind of cutting you off there. Those would be some other things. And again, yeah, just making sure to take care of oneself, how you're exposed to oneself, and make sure to take care of your kids, things along those lines of, practice good care, things like that. There could even be, this even gives me where changes maybe in employment happens, when I think about stuff that's going on when the moon is in these more kind of personal configurations we're talking either the tetragonal ones or the diametrical one in the co-presence. When those ones are happening, there could be, yeah, maybe changes in the market. Saturn was thought to signify like unemployment. Mars is that sort of like taking away of possessions and things along those lines, and needing to find maybe a different way to move under these maybe short time constraints. Just kind of thinking about these different combinations there. So yeah, trying to figure out how to navigate this as best as one can. This is going to be, like I said, the bumpiest that the moon's going to have between the 12th and the 14th. And let's go ahead and move to that 14th. Let's get to that moon in Taurus, because that's going to happen on the, like I said, on the 14th at about 7:31 p.m. Pacific time. And this is nice. The moon moves away. If you're looking at the chart, the moon now moves out from the view of the malefics. It's that little peaceful pocket that it gets from during this period of time. And now it's in the domicile of Venus. This is another one where the moon is, and this is also true where the moon is exalted. This is where now the moon is where the moon is really catered to, outside of its own domicile, where Venus is the one that is looking to take care of the moon. Now, the one kind of trickiness with this one, as unlike with Jupiter, Venus can't see the moon in what it's doing. And so we're gonna, this one is a bit of a tricky one, where it's nice to have the moon in a benefic sign in the, it's kind of left to its own devices, but that's not necessarily, again, like a bad thing, because at least the moon has this configuration with Jupiter. It's co-present with Mercury and the Sun, which, if you're watching this, they would have just completed their exact configuration at about 24 degrees here of Taurus. But this is a nice one that I like for, because we're getting ready to get into the new moon. We're getting ready to wrap up this lunar cycle. This is a time, I think, to take in what has been going on. There's about to be some shifts that are going to be happening to Mars. Actually, if you're looking at the chart, is getting ready to move out of Aries. So we're getting towards the tail end of this long, what feels like it's been a real long co-presence since Mars entered, I think, Aries back in like April. I think it was around April 9th when it entered there. So we've been feeling this co-presence, and a lot has happened in this period of time. So now things are going to ease up at least a little bit, at least until Mars gets it into Cancer. So at least we get a little bit of a break right now. when we're as we're going through this. But that's something that this sort of gives me. There's this moment of, okay, the winds of change are getting ready to come here soon. We're going to be able to, how can I move the needle? How can I look at the things, maybe like with Jupiter, that had hexagonal stuff. Look at how, at the stuff that I've inherited in this situation. Where can I go from that? What are some new things? How do I intend to move this next lunar month? What is that? What are some things that are going to be going down there? This could be a great time for doing some, with it being co-present with Mercury. And again, just something about that, especially when the planets are in that exact conjunction with the sun, that what they would call the, or with that exact conjunction with the sun, there's that really being able to see spirit, that I get an idea of mental clarity, because now Mercury has a seat on the throne for that. It's like, I was thinking about this earlier, when it's like you get that, it's only that degree where you're safe, where you get like that idea of like king for a day. So the sun is like, okay, yes, Mercury, I'll hear all of your things, and then after Mercury gets like 25 degrees, 26 is like, all right, get off. You're done. Give me the microphone back. But this gives me some sort of like some clarity as far as like where we're going to, where do you want to go with this thing? How can we make the most with with Jupiter being there, with the most, with the goodness that we can maybe don't have, let's say, someone who can get us out. Like, trying to think of an example. Let's say if you needed like a loan, and where you would like someone to maybe be able to take half, but they're only able to pay like a fourth, or even like an eighth or something like that. Something's better than nothing, and I know that's not always worth it, but at least it's better than the situation than we were in. That could be. This gives me an opportunity for perspective too, that can happen with this placement, or with this or while the moon is traveling through Cancer. Now, or excuse me, not through Cancer, through Taurus. Now, that's pretty much the moon's adventure in Taurus, and the moon's going to be there from like I said, from the 14th until the 16th, and the moon's going to enter into Gemini at about 7:23 p.m. Pacific time. And when we look at the lay of the land here, the moon's not, even though it's at the moment it's co-present with Venus, it's not going to receive the testimony of Venus. It's not going to complete this aspect before Venus moves out of Gemini into this. They won't have that co-presence until the moon gets into real testimony, until the moon moves into its domicile of Cancer. So really, all we have, the only aspect, and the same thing with Mars, even though the moon, is going to, right now, is in a hexagonal configuration with Mars, is not going to complete that testimony until the moon moves into its domicile here. So the only one that the moon is going to complete is with Saturn. And there's something almost kind of poetic about that, because Saturn is a planet that likes to be solitary. Saturn doesn't get along with anybody. Saturn doesn't care for people, for things. It'll maybe cater to Mars when Mars is in Capricorn. It can put up with Mars only because that's the other malefic. But when we think about this kind of this configuration with Saturn, this is again a harmonious one, the hexagonal configuration, but it's one that it's still with the malefic. So where let's say for example, let's say you just like lost your job. This could be where it's not like you're not hearing back from people, but it's like you have like maybe several interviews, or it would be like maybe you have like you've been getting interview calls, but no one's checked back with you yet. Things are still kind of up in the air. Where if this was like a harder aspect with Saturn, there would just be no interviews at all. We would just be stuck in a rut and not sure what to do, and kind of left with our what we have. That would just be just like a one example. But this gives like it's still a malefic Saturn, but it's a lighter maleficence that's happening there. Saturn's not being just completely just bringing on like the anxieties, the grief, the depression and things like that. We can feel maybe restricted, but we're not completely cut off when we're thinking about this. There's still that a maneuver. If maybe if we put in a little more work, we may have to push ourselves maybe a bit more than maybe not, than one would like, but there is still a chance for some kind of relief from this. So that's something that kind of that Saturn, that moon kind of sextile Saturn there. That one's in that hexagonal configuration with Saturn. That one is particularly just kind of a more of a quieter one that gives me, and that's very interesting considering that the moon now is in its domicile of Mercury when we're thinking about this, and Mercury's going to enter the mix with the moon. As you see, Mercury's actually about getting ready to is right behind the moon, is getting ready to move into its home sign. So that's going to be actually really nice for Mercury. But the moon's running from it. Where Mercury's moving fast, the moon always moves faster. And so they're not going to complete their aspect till next go round, till the next time that the moon gets to there. But this is a similar thing when we look at the position of the moon. It can almost feel that we're just kind of it gives me like a feeling, the aversions, that you're just it's like imagine that you're in someone's house, you need them to take care of something, but they're not answering, they're not able to see, they're tied up for some reason or another. And that's not going to be the case always. At least when Mercury is there, it's going to be able to at least see the moon in its house, even if they're not going to be able to talk with one another. It's like if I'm on the first floor, you're on the third floor, and I'm trying to catch you, but you're getting ready to walk out of the place. Like you're always going to be ahead of me if we're moving at the same pace there, if that makes sense. So very interesting time that the moon is having there. I think it's a more of a maybe dealing with what I think of Saturn dealing with, like secrets and things that we keep to ourselves. Maybe more of a contemplative time, maybe a chance for some conversation if there's some things going on in the home, maybe something that's going on in we may see some sort of like something revealed, something with like the moon was the significator of the queen, so maybe something with some kind of prominent female figure may come up there when we think about the moon. So that's pretty much the moon in Gemini. And then we move to, and it'll be there until the 18th, and it'll move into Cancer at about 6:46 p.m. Pacific time. And I'm only going to talk about one thing, how I want to end this, and how I wanted to kind of do things. I want to talk about the applications and separations of the moon, because though they were thought of, they're very different than just the like, unlike the configurations of the moon, like how the moon is co-present with right now Venus, it's co-present with Jupiter, is receiving overcoming square from the superior square from Saturn, it's hexagonal to Mars, and right now for the sun, I don't think it's going to complete its configuration by the time it gets to the sun. Let me actually look at that real quick and see. No, it's not. It's not. The moon's going to be in, or the sun will enter into Gemini before the moon completes that in Cancer. So yeah, it's only going to be. It'll be talking to about four of the planets. Again, the malefics and the benefics that the moon's going to be talking with. But I wanted to talk about the application and separation that's going to be happening, and that's how we're going to be ending the week essentially. Kind of thinking about that as we move into the next day. But it was the idea of the applications and separations. It's the idea of the moon flowing from one planet to another, and what that entails. Now, let me find and I'm reading from. Now we're going to be actually waxing in light now that we had that new moon. And actually, let me go ahead before I move into that. I should have paid that a little more attention. Now that I'm actually thinking about that, let me go back a little bit to that new moon really quick, just to give that a little bit of light. That new moon is going, well, which is funny because it's not, there's no light that's happening right there, but the new moon is going to happen on the 16th, and that's going to happen at about 25 degrees and 57 minutes of Taurus, and that's when we're going to be kicking off this new moon there. I like that it is when we kind of, and even when we kind of thinking about that idea of that co-presence with the sun being under the beams. It's like is the sun takes the light when you first get under the beams. It gives back that light. It gives you where you're kind of sitting on the throne of the sun, and then it takes that light back away, and then it gives it back when you get out of that once you get into that rising, that process. But when you think about that whole process, it's almost like a burning away, a renewal, and then a going back out there again, and coming back with this sort of fresh light, this sort of fresh revival that is going on there. That when you think about the new moons that are happening. So yeah, this is where we kind of kick off the new start here, and the moon is going to start waxing in light, as I was talking about there. So just a little something to pay attention to. But let me go back to the moon in Cancer, kind of wrap up this video here. Now the moon flowing from Venus to Mars. That's how we're gonna finish up this day. The moon it'll apply to be co-present with Venus, and then shortly after will be hexagonal with Mars, or at least in complete aspects. Now, if the moon, and this is from Firmicus Maternus that I'm reading in the Mathesis, if the moon flowing away from Venus would be born to Mars, and we're not going to pay attention to that. This is technically this would actually, in this instance, I think it would be a diurnal noctivity. It would be a diurnal noctivity nativity, because the sun's not set yet. But if it's a diurnal nativity and the moon is waxing or full of lights, it decrees the destruction of miserable calamity stirred up by some love, and because of this, it proclaims the grave risk of dangers, so that they will approach the custody of prison and the danger of condemnation in those who perish in violent deaths on account of this. It'll make some people be exposed, others subjugated. It makes others be given over to the miserable burden of captivity, namely according to the power of the places and signs. And of course, this gets very nuanced as we obviously will see. The moon does have a lot of support in this, so that is something to keep in mind while we're talking about this. And I would more so take a lot of this, if I was really even thinking about, which is something to keep in mind. I think I'm factoring into the fact that the moon is having this more easier aspect with Mars, but this is really kind of talking about this in general, just the moon, just the idea of what happens when the moon is separating from Venus and applying to Mars. It was in this really great, it's like you went from the care of Venus, the benefic, to the care of Mars. That's going to be a very different feel. Venus is going to be there to support you, to cheer you on, to make you, to laugh when you maybe make a mistake. And Mars is going to be like, go, let's get this thing done. Come on, hacha. And, he's going to be doing a lot. That's going to be very different feels. And I think that's where what Firmicus is trying to really kind of evoke here. That we're kind of ending this, not necessarily that we're ending on a bad note, but the moon is, and let me go ahead and switch over. When we're just kind of looking at the lay of the land, the moon is, before I switch over, even though we're not talking about it this week, that configuration is on. It's not, we may not see that testimony until really strong until we get into next week, but that, which will come to testimony on the 19th there with that square with Saturn. But that aspect is on, that heart, and it's a tough one, talking about from Saturn being in that superior position. Especially if you read any kind of delineations and you think about those superior, and then we'll go ahead and switch over now, but you think about those superior hard aspects from the malefics, those aren't generally good times. And we're thinking about that. There's going to be a bit more challenges. There's going to be maybe some accusations that may come up on account of maybe either some, since we're flown away from Venus, maybe some again, maybe some notable female figure that's happening with this, just because it's the moon and Venus that are very close in configuration with one another, because Venus is actually going to be applying as well to Mars. So the moon is very closely. I'd be very curious to see what happens around that time, if there's anything kind of notable in a more kind of mundane sense that's happening. So that could be something to kind of pay attention to, if there's some sort of whatever that happens. See, I'm not rooting for a calamity, obviously, but that would be one where I would just kind of keep an eye out for things. Make sure to, when you get omens like that, to just like, maybe if you got to travel somewhere, kind of watch your speed. You're coming off let's say with that Venus, that gives me the feeling of like you've come off a weekend and now you got to come back into the work week, and then there's all this kind of crazy traffic. You got to weave in and out of stuff. Buses are doing this, people are doing that. That gives almost that sort of shift in some sort of feel. And a lot of planets just changed sign here recently. Mars, as you were looking at that chart, Mars just changed, Venus changed, Moon changed, Mercury changed like a couple of days before that. So there's been a lot of activity that's kind of going on in this time. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is a bit of a reshuffling of things that's going to be happening over this week, as we kind of wind down into things there. So yeah, that's pretty much the week for you there. I keep telling myself I'm gonna try to bring these videos down, but they just sometimes the things just kind of come out there. And with me trying new stuff, I gotta make sure I have this stuff prepared beforehand. But hopefully you've even been liking that to kind of see from the mind of the ancients, and to see from those kind of Hellenistic astrologers how they looked at the aspects and how nuanced the things can be, where it's not just looking at the configurations, but it's looking at whether the moon is or planets are flowing away and then what are they flowing to. So it's like that's very important. And that's actually something where you see a lot of if you're doing like electional astrology, you're always paying attention to what the moon is applying to and what is it separating from, or what it's flowing to or what it's flowing away from, when we're thinking about that. So it's good to even see that in your chart. You can tell a lot about your chart, even just from watching just the like how the moon, where the moon is, the applications and separations of the moon according to your chart. If you even just like span it from like a 30-degree range, and just kind of see where the moon's coming from and where it's going to, it can give a really fascinating and real kind of powerful kind of insight there. I remember reading that in, I think it was in Balance. I think it might have been in that, but for sure it was Robert Schmidt in his lectures were talking about that, and I was like, yeah, that's it. It was really cool to see that. So that may be something fun for you to look into. But yeah, let me know how this week is going for you there. What are your kind of in plans for the intentions for this new moon, how you've noticed things are moving in your chart. Yeah, we're getting ready to have some ingresses, big papas, getting closer to moving there as we we got almost about a month until Jupiter's going to move into Leo, and then that's going to have enter into the domicile of the sun, and that's getting one of its sect mates. So that's going to be, we'll see about that. I think that can be, we'll see how Jupiter fares with that, but I think it'll take some of that pressure off from Saturn for sure. But yeah, let me know how you've been navigating through this stuff. I'm now getting back ahead of things, so things have actually kind of been improving. I've been taking a bit more time. Again, doing my thing, doing a lot of studying, kind of figuring out how I want to word things and do the language, and just tightening up techniques and doing consultations and things. So that's been fun. That's been fun, and it's been cool to do something. You could just kind of notice changes in my whether it be with clients, or it be with myself, or with like friends and things like that, and kind of navigating that space. So I've been really enjoying astrology, and enjoying it, not just astrology itself, but the things that it's brought in, the more kind of philosophical, and even the more kind of, there's a different sort of level of spirituality that I even feel that I'm kind of developing, that I'm getting almost like reacquainted with. So that's a really even kind of a fascinating thing to navigate too. So that's basically the stuff that's going on me. All this Saturn and in going through my ninth house, all the secrets will be revealed soon with due time. But But yeah, that's basically what's going on here. But if you want any sort of guidance with navigating what's going on for you, whether because Gemini seasons getting ready to come up here soon. So for you those of you got Sun in Gemini, if you want to see, I got a bunch of Sun in Gemini to get in contact with, mom, sisters, friends, couple friends, and yeah. So I guess that's always a busy one. Summer, this Gemini season onward is always a busy one. Several, yeah, I'm thinking about the Geminis, Cancers, Leos, Virgos. It don't stop for a minute. But if that's something where if you want any sort of like guidance or anything along those lines, down in the description box there's a link to book a consultation with me, so definitely check that out. If you have any questions about the services that I provide, my email is down there, so definitely feel free to reach out. There is a couple of links for the playlist for the Celestial News Monthly and for the Lunar Shenanigans. I'll probably be having the Celestial News Monthly out for June. It's actually interesting to be talking about June. I just finished the calendar for that not too long ago. So yeah, probably be releasing for that one here probably sometime next week when I'll have that out for that. So you be keeping eyes out for that. And then I have these. I'm actually gonna. I may. I'm gonna try to do some after this video. But if you, I have these different videos talking about different planets in different domiciles of the different of other planets and in different places, in the different places, whether it be the first place, second place, third place, all that good stuff, and how to navigate that in one's chart. So definitely go check that out. And I think that's all I got for you. So I'm trying to wrap this up. So until next time, stay mindful out there. Well, you can't keep eyes on that good old moon right now since we're in a new moon, but it won't be long till the moon's smiling again. Probably by the time the moon is in, let's see, what was the moon in? New moon in Taurus. By the time the moon's in Cancer, you should definitely be able to see it by the time the moon's in Cancer. And I will catch you on the next one. Later.